Hello, fellow anti-novelists and friends. It's Victoria here, back with installment 2 of our story sketching and plotting out our novel. So you can see I've taken the same sheet that I used in the first video, and I've added some things in red. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through my story using some of the key components that should appear in a good plot. Always keep in mind, these are suggestions. It doesn't mean that you'll use all of these. These are suggestions for things that can help move you through your own story. Take what works, leave the rest. So, when we started with developing our offering. Sometimes this is called the hook. On our plot cheat sheet, this is called the inciting incident. So, at the beginning of your story, something happens which pulls your reader into that story, and that's when you make your offer. In my story, the first thing that you meet, which is actually a character per se, is a book. So when you meet this book, you also meet our main female character, which is Dr. Tara Kaler, and in that first act, you're learning about her stakes. Her stakes are actual death stakes regarding her mom. I won't tell you any more, no spoilers. You also meet our male main character, Marshall Branch. His stakes are personal, so they're not in regards to losing somebody that he loves in the same way that Tara's stakes are death stakes regarding her mom. So you're meeting the main characters, check. You're hinting of the antagonist, check. My antagonist I'm calling the Chamber, and it involves two characters named Pierce and Villette. So you meet them and you start to understand the systemic antagonist, okay? Remember, I'm writing a series of books, and so I have low-level bad guys and I have higher-level bad guys that govern the entire series of stories. So we meet the Chamber, which is our systemic bad guy. I also introduce you to hand embroidery because Stitch plays a major role in the story. So I'm introducing elements that are not people per se, but that function as characters in the story. So those are some of the decisions you want to start making early on. What features, what items, what things are you going to include in order to drive your story forward? Is there something that you're passionate about? Are you passionate about tennis or rowing or collecting stamps? Whatever your thing is, including that as an element in your story is part of what drives your fascination. It's part of what drives the energy that keeps you coming back to get that story finished. And it's also part of what keeps you engaged with your audience, because if you include things that you love so much you can't stop talking about them or thinking about them, then you're sharing that with your reader. That's part of the offering, okay? So in addition to the elements of your story and the people characters, you're sharing things that are going to promise your reader this story is worth reading. So in my first act, I'm offering this mysterious book, the Voynich manuscript, and I'm offering the magical or potentially powerful history behind hand embroidery. All right. So those are some of the ways that I've developed those elements from my own story. When we get to the first plot point, which is the end of the first act, that's the point of no return, and that's our new world. So these elements all come together in order to drive towards the end of that first act. When we get into Act 2, we're talking about navigating the new world. So something happens at the end of Act 1 that forces your character into a new world. Now, again, I don't want to give you too many spoilers, but Branch and Tara experience an attack. They experience a confrontation, and that pushes them out of Act 1 into Act 2. So that's how their new world begins. So in this new world, your characters are learning lessons. They're solving mysteries and figuring things out. Most importantly, they are growing as people toward this midpoint. The midpoint is when they go from victim to warrior. It is a big catalyst for change and growth. So in my story, I have affectionately referred to this as close the love deal. This is where Tara and Branch get together, so you've got your romance element, and it's also where Tara steps into her power, partially as a result of that relationship. Because remember, behind each of these characters are real people. And so you want to evolve them. In this case, they evolve by finally getting together. And that speaks to Branch's personal death stakes. All right, so see how those pieces fit together to move through the story? So as we get on the other side of the midpoint into Act 3, we're still making discoveries and marking milestones. And that's how we're moving our story forward. So when we get here, I've got notes on it's escalating, there's battles and setbacks, there may be personal losses or twists. At the end of Act 3 is a great place to put a twist or a revelation that results in momentum and your characters realizing they must push forward. So in my story, you've got a mystery regarding the book, which is the Voynich manuscript. You've got a mystery regarding hand embroidery that comes together. And then you've got Tara's ancestors and closure with her antagonist. So as you step out of Act 3 into Act 4, which is the end of the book, these things are coming together. These clues are starting to add up. They're experiencing their final setback, and they're experiencing having to make that final change to win, that final change to beat the antagonist. So then I've got plot closure, which brings them into the new world and shows them in the new world. And I've got character arc. And I've made a note, positive or negative, okay? A character can change in a positive way over their arc, which is what Branch and Tara do, or a character can have a negative character arc in which they descend into the negative aspects of themselves. That's what happens with our antagonist up here. Pierce and Valette, they're on a negative spiral. Branch and Tara, they're on a positive spiral. So what's going to happen is those spirals are going to cross and land us at the end of the book. I've got fulfill what you offered at the beginning. This is where you bring your offer to closure. And I've got Branch's fulfillment of his destiny is where he ends up at his character arc, and then closure with his antagonist. So they're both going to have some closure in beating their bad guy. However, dun dun dun, when you get to the end and you fulfill the offer that you made up here, in my case, it's between what happens with the book and the embroidery and how that plays into their lives going forward, you're going to make a new offering. Because remember, in my case, I'm writing a series. And so ending this first book has to be satisfying. It has to settle what I've offered my reader, which it will. But I'm also going to offer a new hook, okay? So the new offering will land on a little bit of a cliffhanger because I can't resist, and that's what will launch my readers into the second book. So if you apply that to the plot beats that are in your plot cheat sheet, you see how those things begin to line up and how you take your characters and move them through each beat of the story so that one thing leads to another and it drives your reader through to the end. So I hope that was helpful. In the next section, in the next video, we will start breaking down section by section what these things can mean. I'll work a little bit with the plot generator, a little bit with the conflict tool, and we'll really start figuring out how are you going to throw those challenges at your character and what does it mean every step of the way as you drive through your plot. So I will see you in the next video. Get those words on the page, get your Post-it notes and your colored markers out if color coding turns you on, and start writing because that's what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.